An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? Your stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 148. I'm Aaron Pellier.
I'm Darlene.
Darlene picked one today. She picked it.
I picked The Mouse on the Moon.
Yes.
It's a comedy, but it does have space in it.
There's a little bit of science fiction. It's from 1963, and I didn't know what to make of this movie. Because there are things that I feel are very funny in it, and there are things that make me feel like this is not good, which is weird because it does have this amazing charm. There's a charm to it that the Pink Panther films had. That's like the closest comparison I can make to them. Now, this is the second movie in a series.
Yes, the other one was The Mouse
That Roared.
And
that actually did have Peter Sellers in it. This one did not. And there's some interesting connections.
It's
in
a
this
satire.
movie.
You do realize that.
See, it's a satire. And I'm the one that always says, I love satire films. To me, this is not a satire. Is
it because you're missing what they're making
and it
fun
very
of?
well could be.
Because this is taking place in 1963, right after Sputnik.
If it was satire based on the space program, I would get it. It is not a satire on the space program. Even though it seems like it should be a satire on the space program, to me, if it is a satire, it's a very badly written satire. Okay? I think it's more of if it is a satire, it is a political satire based on the common politics of the day. But
that's what I think it is.
I think there are other satires in this general era that are better at being a satire. Dr. Strangelove being one of them. Now, I know you don't like Dr. Strangelove, but to me, that is one of the best satires ever made. But this is an odd movie.
I actually smiled and kind of laughed at all the professor, whatever his name was, Professor Koken ties.
Darlene, okay, you can never pronounce names correctly. Okay, what is it? It's Professor Cocknitz.
His whole laid back is just everybody else is.
He's a hippie. He's a hippie before like the hippies were a thing. That's what he is. He's stoned out of his mind the entire time. Like that's.
I didn't get it. I just thought he was an absent-minded professor with.
He's not. He's not absent-minded. It's just that nothing seems to faze him because he's eaten like
mushrooms
6 pounds of hash brownies, or he's eaten a whole bunch of like he doesn't come across as drugged. It's just that nothing at all fazes him. So that's my impression is that.
But it's funny compared to all these other people that are just.
Yes. Now let's talk about the directors, writers, the actors in this first before we go into the plot.
It's 1 hour and 22 minutes.
Did you find budgets for it?
No, I did not.
There's actual Russian spoken in this movie, by the way, and it's proper Russian. I actually understood what was being said in Russian, which means that the Russian that was being spoken was very simple Russian, but it was a lot of counting. It was a lot of just like quick questions of like, who is here, who is this, when's the rocket launching. Very simple Russian, so I actually understood it. But let's talk about the crew. The director is Richard Lester, who you may remember as being the director that took over from Donner on Superman 2. He also did Superman 3. Like, those are the ones that I would recognize him from. The writer for this, now, this is based on a series of novels, so I'm not talking about the writer of the novel. I'm talking about the writer of the screenplay, is Michael Pertwee. And I immediately went, Pertwee, huh? And I had to look it up to make sure. But yeah, this is the brother of John Pertwee, the guy that played the Third Doctor. Now, I've met John Pertwee in person before he died. Unfortunately, you never did.
Yeah, and he's my favorite.
And yeah, he's your favorite Doctor. Um, and looking back on it, I do remember him talking about how his family worked in show business before him. And this is his brother's a writer. He did things. There is another Doctor Who connection in this, in that one of the main characters is played by Bernard Cribbins, who we have seen in Doctor Who and the Dalek Invasion of Earth 2150, because he also played in modern Doctor Who as Wilf, the grandfather of Donna Noble during the 10th Doctor era. And I love Bernard Cribbins. I think he's a fantastic actor. Again, I think he might be the shining star in this, but I will also say that there's another character, before I get to who I think is actually the best actor in this. There's another character who plays the Russian delegate. And that's his character's name, Russian Delegate. He's actually the voice of Wallace from Wallace and Gromit.
Yes, but you have wonderful things called plumber and band leader.
But that's not what I'm talking about.
Bartender.
It's that you can't tell that is Wallace, because A, he's speaking Russian, and B, he's younger.
He's younger, and his voice is, and they have MI5 man.
I know, yeah, there are characters that are not characters, but
because
the shining star in this is actually a person that I don't really know from anything else, but all the way through this show, all the way through this movie, I kept thinking this character should have been played by Roger Delgado from Doctor Who, the guy that played the Master during the Third Doctor's era, because he looks like Roger Delgado. If you glanced at the screen, you would think he was an older Roger Delgado. Like, Roger Delgado would have been too young for this part at this point. Fair enough. But he looks like Roger Delgado. His name is Ron Moody, who ends up playing, what's his character's name? The Prime Minister Montjoy of this little nation that we're in. But anyway, so this did feel like a 1960s British production, because it was. It has that feeling. It has the feeling of the Doctor Who movies from this time, doesn't it?
Kind of, yes.
It has a feel of Day of the Triffids in some ways. The quality of the film, the way that the color is in everything. I'm not talking about the pacing or the writing. I'm just talking about the general ambiance of it. And it's movies like this that, because of that ambiance, I likely give it more credit than it's due, because I guarantee you, if this was an American production from American International, like Roger Corman, even if it looked good, it would have a very different feel to it, and I probably wouldn't have liked it. But there's a certain charm to this movie.
Well, it starts with a certain charm with that cute cartoon.
Oh, it's a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy introduction.
In the credits.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, no, there's a mouse, and I'm like, okay, so this is a movie about a mouse going to the moon. No, that's a metaphor. And
yes.
And I
mouse being the little tiny,
the Duchy of Grand Fenwick.
And it's when it gets introduced, it's a bunch of British people bought this and created their...
No, not a bunch of people. One British dude bought this tiny little plot of land. In the books, it's supposed to be in the French Alps, but I think they show it somewhere in the... It looks like it's somewhere in Austria, honestly.
It's supposed to be in the Alps, though.
Yeah, it's weird, but it's only 5 square miles. And they say that it's the smallest nation on Earth, but it's not, because the Vatican's smaller, and there's a couple other places that are smaller than that. But they say, it's the smallest nation on Earth, and this land was bought back in the 1800s by this British guy. And basically they pay lip service to British culture in every way, shape, and form.
Including having the guard that looks just like the
Yeah, they have like Queen's Guard with the big, tall,
yeah,
black fur
just-
hats.
Yeah,
Um,
Buckingham Palace is what I was thinking.
It's their society. Well, they specifically say that this is the least progressive country in the world. And they do a couple things to actually showcase this. Their society is run by a politically incompetent ruling class. Okay,
And the prime minister is something that is
inherited, and the entire family is incompetent at ruling. But I'm saying there's one interesting little tidbit in there that I don't know if you got about how they're the least progressive. That the most modern clothes that anyone has is like the protesters who are wearing like 1960s protesting kind of like those are the clothes that a protester would wear.
And they're all like
The
college,
regular, yeah, they're college kids. But the regular people, there's nobody that wears anything more modern than Edwardian fashion. Did you notice that?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And the Grand Duchess wears something that looks like
Queen Victoria
Victorian
would have
War.
Yeah, and she's insane.
Okay,
She's
I
shouldn't say
dementia.
that. She has dementia. I shouldn't say insane. She has dementia.
And the prime minister is just a buffoon.
He's a buffoon, but he's actually. Here's the thing.
He's self-centered.
He's self-centered. It's hard to talk about this plot because we're going to have to end up summing up the plot in like maybe 4 sentences because there's so many scenes that have absolutely nothing to do with each other in this. It's sort of Monty Python-esque in that way. But anyway, the prime minister, yes, he's a buffoon, but he seems to also be shrewd at the same time. Like he's able to see how he can manipulate a situation to his own ends. Now, sometimes that does not work, but in other times he's able to plot these things out so even when they fail, they work out. And in this movie, there's like 3 or 4 separate plots that he sort of has going on. And they all succeed.
But it's
like
him that you have to know about, and that the fact that he's taking a bath in there's a guy coming up with a big, what do you call those things that have a lid over top of it? It looks like it's supposed to be dinner, but it's very large, and it has a pail of cold water in it.
Okay.
Or hot water. I don't know which.
Mm-hmm.
But the prime minister is bitching about not having hot water.
And he wants to have indoor plumbing.
He wants indoor plumbing in this castle that is, and that's a castle too, because
yes, it's a castle. It has a curtain wall.
Because where you have the outside is taking place in the courtyard of the castle.
But you know you already skipped a very important plot point.
What did I skip?
During the initial introduction to what Grand Fenwick is,
it's the
we
wine.
have the military parade where half the military just passes out from heat. Like they're just face down on the ground, and like the general comes out and starts bitching at them to button up their coats, and they're just completely flat out on the ground, unconscious. But we learned that the only thing that makes money for this tiny little country is their wine.
Which is what this is a sequel to, because the other one was a California, the one previous to this.
A California vineyard starts making a knockoff of their wine because their wine is supposedly fairly good. That's the only reason why they're ever able to fund anything. But yeah, the first movie has to deal with a California vineyard making a knockoff of their wine. But this one is the wine batch went bad.
Last year's wine batch is
explosive. Well, we've also learned that it's not just explosive, it's highly radioactive for some reason. Okay, now this is supposed to be funny. Fine, ha ha ha, there's no science in this movie. Just go with it. Whenever there's something sciencey being said, it is ridiculous, but it's supposed to be ridiculous. They're not trying to pass it off as
anything else. Because when Professor, whatever his name is, K.O., sits there and rambles on about what
they literally cut away and like come back hours later and he's still rambling.
And the son is asleep.
But he's like, and he's still just rambling, and I thought that was funny. To me, that was funny.
I said most of the stuff that I get a laugh at happens to be the professor and the bumbling person that plays, Vincent
Mountjoy, the son of the prime minister.
And that's Bernard Cribbins.
See, and I think the most laughs I got out of this was honestly from the prime minister. Just being both incompetent and seemingly very shrewd at the same time. Like, does he succeed in his goals? Yeah, he does. He succeeds in all of his goals in this movie. And he doesn't think he is, and he's trying to fix the schemes while things are falling apart. And does he do it? Yeah. Yeah, he does. You might argue that, yeah, he's a bumbling fool, but he is, but he's a very shrewd operator. So their whole economy is falling apart because now they have nothing to export, and bottles of wine just explode
so
with
violence. They can't transport it.
Because this is not explosive wine like it's nitroglycerin. This is Nuka-Cola Nuka grenades from Fallout. Because they're radioactive wine bottles that detonate.
You know what didn't? I thought it was going to have a joke to it, but it never came out, was those two. The professor comes in and talks to the prime minister.
Yeah.
And he says, I just found two very rare boobobs
or something like that.
Yeah, there's some kind of bird. And it never
really goes anywhere?
It never goes anywhere.
Well, he captured them. They were in his... Remember, he started yelling for people to take care of the boobobs when he's on his way to the moon? Please remember to feed the boobobs. Bye. Bye. You know,
yes,
like...
Out the window.
Out the window. All right. But anyway, the scheme comes out. The prime minister's like, I can't fund our country to have indoor plumbing because we have no money coming in. So what I am going to do is ask the United States for funding. $500,000 to fund rocket research here, because the space program is such a big deal, and America's always talking about international cooperation. And like one of his his son's like, that's insane. They know that we don't have a space program, and he's like, I know that. They know that. They'll know that there's no space program here, that they're just helping us out. But the thing is if we openly ask for it under these terms, there's no way they can turn us down because it would make them look bad about international space cooperation. See, this seems ridiculous, but he's figured it out, right?
Yes.
So he asks the United States for $500,000, and like the Secretary of State gets this in Washington, D.C., and he's like, $500,000, this is insane. They don't have a rocket program. But that's what they want everyone to think they have. And that makes a lot of sense, because if we give them, let's say, $1 million, we'll look amazing to everybody and we'll show up the Soviets.
And they do in the UN.
Yeah, they go to the UN and say, under all of our international cooperation that we have been talking about to make space international, we are giving the Grand Duchy, the Duchy of Grand Fenwick. They don't announce
who it was.
Yeah, they said, because we're not going to announce which nation has our favor, that we're going to give this nation $1 million. And like the ambassador from Grand Fenwick's like, oh, and that all this money goes back to Grand Fenwick. And the prime minister's like, yes, my plans are coming to fruition. And they literally start building like public bathrooms.
They start to, but then this rocket comes in.
Yeah, and that is actually funny. Like a rocket gets delivered, and it turns out that it's a Vostok rocket from the Soviet Union, because now that the Soviets have figured out where the money went, they don't want to be showed up by the United States, so they donate a functional rocket to Grand Fenwick.
And knocks down their wall.
Like it knocks down one of their walls inside the castle, and they're like, oh crap, what are we going to do?
This is the thing that I think is a joke too. All the ministers, the cabinet, all wear this tan-colored jacket with this brown tie.
But the opposition all wear black. It's just their political party stuff. I think it comes down to them being... I think there's some British politician color type stuff.
I think it's a joke.
Well, it's supposed to be a joke, but it's lost on me.
It's lost on us.
All
yes.
I know is that like the loyal politicians have one color suits, the other ones don't. Okay, so anyway,
and then there's the kids protesting everything.
And there's kids that are always protesting. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just they're protesting.
They're going to protest. Okay. Cynthia, which is like the niece of the prime minister. Or something like that.
No, because she's interested in Bernard Cribben's character. They're going to get married. So it's not son and niece. I think she's the niece of the professor or something like that.
Okay, but she's somebody's...
Because everybody's related. It's a 5 square mile nation. Everyone's related to everybody else. They're all inbred to hell and back. I guarantee you, because they're the only British speakers that are in this whole area. And they're very, very properly British. So, of course, they're not wanting to deal with, improper French speakers or Italians or something like that.
Or Germans.
So, anyway, the Soviets send this rocket, and they're like, well, what the hell are we going to do with this? We're not actually making a space program. And they figure out that they can turn the rocket into a big hot water heater, to power the public baths and the bath of the prime minister. Because, by God, he wants hot bath.
And they even put shower heads on the bottom.
Well, no, that's the professor putting shower heads on the bottom because he figures out that he really is going to make a space program because the Grand Fennec wine, being that it's radioactive and explosive, actually makes an incredible science fiction rocket fuel that produces a flubber-like effect, that it can make things fly. So
yes, the teapot.
He makes teapots fly because he puts hot
water. And that was
in.
another lovely joke. He was doing a teapot, and the Grand Duchy wants tea. She calls for more tea, and this teapot flies in.
And she goes, "Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much." So we end up having Professor Cochnitz builds this rocket using the Grand Fennec wine. Okay. He then invites everybody from like the United States, Great Britain. Great Britain, by the way, sends a spy who is very clearly a spy. Everyone knows is a spy.
MI5.
It should be MI6.
6.
But because it's external to the British,
Maybe that's a joke too.
That the British think that Grand Fennec is a part
of them.
Yeah, a part of Great Britain somehow, some way. I don't know. Anyway, everyone knows he's a spy, and they're like, "No, go ahead, take pictures. It's fine. Send it back. We don't care. There's nothing secret here." So anyway, the professor invites like the delegation from the United States, from Great Britain, from the Soviet Union to come and see his rocket because he's going to go to the moon. And this is 1963, and everyone's like, "Oh my God. How is Grand Fennec going to get to the moon in 1963 when we have just started our like manned space programs, basically?" And they think it's a goddamn joke because they come to see the rocket, and it sure was an actual, Vostok rocket, but it has been completely ripped apart in every way, shape, and form by the professor and turned into this junk heap that everyone thinks is impossible to fly because it would just burn up. There's like all these weird angles on it. It clearly has no rocket fuel in it. It's all a put on, right?
And he's decorated the compartment as a house.
And he has like chickens inside.
And he's watering a plant. And
well, how are you going to get to the moon in 2 days in this thing? You don't have enough rocket fuel. Oh no, I don't plan on getting to the moon in 2 days. I plan on getting there in 3 weeks. Take your time, sir. There's, and everyone's like, what the hell's wrong with you? This is insanity.
And their gears was a handles for the from the pub.
Yeah, they're like beer pump handles. It is insanity. So he actually launches it using the sci-fi flubber stuff, and everyone's utterly shocked that this thing is going into space, right?
Well, it goes up a little bit, then goes back down.
Yeah, because I forget what the hell was wrong with it. I forget. It doesn't matter. Like, it goes back up and then goes back down. They're like, oh, that's a good special effect. How'd they do that? And it just launches. And it just makes this kind of whoop, 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 whoop sound as it just slowly goes up. And while they're on their way, he says, I'm not going to go any faster because there's micrometeorites out here and we don't want to run into anything. We don't have any protection in this thing. How does he have enough air for 3 weeks? How do they have enough food for 3 weeks? Does
they
not
brought
matter.
their chickens so they could
They have eggs on the way and then roast
Roast
chicken on the way back. So now that the US and the Soviets have seen this thing launch, they're like, well, shit, we can't let Grand Fennec plant their flag on the moon first. That's insanity. So they basically do this crash program,
both the USSR and US,
with their Nazis, because they literally do Nazi salutes in this, which it wasn't funny. It wasn't funny. Like when they order the scientists to get on, like both sides to get on this, we need to launch within 2 weeks.
Making a joke about the fact
Operation Paperclip and all the capture. Yes, I know, but they both end up doing these Nazi salutes to the respective space agency leads, and I'm like, oh, come on, that's a little too far. Yeah. Anyway, they do a crash course and they end up sending up rockets that they assume are going to get there before Grand Fennec, because Grand Fennec's taking their dear sweet time. But because Bernard Cribbin's character leans against a lever a little bit.
No, he tries to get the chicken off the gears.
Yeah, but he knocks one of the levers and accelerates the ship, so they're going to land 2 days early. So they land.
And then right afterwards, the US
and the Soviets
in
land
identical,
there.
except one's blue and one's red.
No, they're exactly the same colors of their ships. They just have different flags on them. Their spacesuits are exactly the same, and those are different colors. But yeah, they land and they start arguing about who was first. Oh, it was Grand Fennec. Well, no one's going to believe that. That's insane that you got here first in this junk trap of a rocket. And then
they sit down for dinner.
They sit down to dinner and have roast chicken.
Because they're all, the other four have got these toothpaste things that they're supposed to be
as
eating.
Well, they should.
And
then the professor basically convinces them that it will be the first people back from the moon that are the most important. It's not about who got here first. It's about who gets back first. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? Especially since you've just been making the argument in the scene before to the astronauts, since you planted the Grand Fennec flag here first, this is your moon and they need to apply for admittance to your country. You're turning the argument completely on its head later on and making it so that the Soviets and the US could literally argue you didn't make it to the moon first. Since
when's the space treaty?
This year.
Okay, that might be something they're
outer
making.
Space Treaty. Well, it's Outer Space Treaty 1962, 1963. Most of it was developed in 62. But anyway, they both try to launch. U.S. and Soviets try to launch back and then wreck their spaceships.
They sink.
They just sink because I guess lunar dust is too soft. They just sink. So all the astronauts now need to come back in this tiny little rocket that for Grand Fennec that can barely hold 2 people. Remember, it was originally designed to only hold 1 Soviet dog. Then it was made into this cozy little cottage. Then it now has 6 people that takes 3 weeks to get back because the professor doesn't want to rush things. So they have enough air again for 6 people for 3 weeks.
And Fenwick is having a funeral.
A funeral for the astronauts because they lost contact as soon as they all left the Earth.
And that's when it lands, is before the Queen pulls the Grand Duchess pulls her.
Yeah, and there's a statue. They pull a blanket off a statue. But anyway, everybody lands safe, and there's backslaps around and lots of bewilderment.
And then all of them try to take off through the gate
at the same time to go make claims first or something like that. I don't know. It doesn't really make sense. The end. It's kind of nonsensical. It's nonsensical in a Pink Panther-ish way. See, I can't compare it to Strangelove because Strangelove, it all makes sense. The entire point of it, I mean, even though the situation leading into the movie is ludicrous, right? That scenes follow scenes follow scenes follow scenes, where here it is not like that. It is not like that. There are scenes that are just there to be silly. There are scenes to be there to make you laugh about a specific thing, but they're not really important to the plot because the plot really isn't important. The plot is there to service stupid things happening and people being ridiculous. So, does the Prime Minister get away with all of his plans?
Yep.
He sure does. He gets plumbing and door plumbing for the entire country based on this
But
space
the
race.
entire country is in one freaking castle.
Yeah, but he also ends up winning the space race because of it. Like his plans to get indoor plumbing and hot water for his bath means he won the space race and is suddenly like the most well-respected country on the planet. Even though like the wine this year can radioactively make people explode. Like it's insanity, right? What worked in this movie, Darlene? Yeah, I'm not angry.
It was weirdly funny.
There are parts of this movie that are very funny. But I will also put that in what doesn't work. There are parts of this movie that are supposed to be funny that just made me angry. Like the Nazi thing, how completely bafflingly dumb the professor is, both at times is amazingly funny and frustrating. Like just this makes me angry. How can anyone function like this? To me, the funniest character in this is the Prime Minister. Because he's just so over the top serious. And he is not supposed to be funny.
He's surrounded by incompetence.
And he's competent. That's the thing. Like I think he's the most competent person in an incompetent society. That's what it is. That he feels the need to rule these idiots. And he will, and he'll do it well.
He sent his son
to the
Vincent
moon.
to Britain to get an education, and he comes back.
He comes back an idiot. Like he's still an idiot. He is. He wants to be an astronaut, but then like tries to woo a girl by playing a broken guitar, like a guitar that has literally no neck.
Well, no, she pushed him down, and she broke the guitar.
But he still tries to play it. It's like, is there brain damage here? And to me, it's that this country is so inbred that the vast majority of its population has some problems.
You see the whole vast.
Yeah, and they're all
all in the courtyard.
They're all in the courtyard. I know.
There's probably 100.
And there's people that like the people that live right outside Grand Fennec like are just baffled by them too.
Oh, the farmer
he's like trying to give directions to the MI5 guy. The MI5 guy is like, where's Grand Fennec? Oh, it's right there through that gate. Just go through that gate, turn a right, and you'll find the castle. Aren't they going to want one of my passports? Passport? No, they don't care.
And there's no one at the thing. It's
just like a country gate. No one gives a crap. It's frustrating. Like, are you a country? No, you're not. It's like the only reason you're a country is that no one will take you seriously enough to even consider you like Sealand. Like the whole point of Sealand is, we're our own nation and we're so small that no one gives a crap about us. But the point is that like the Brits actually do give a crap, and they're like, no, you're not. And the Sealand people still try to sell titles, which you can buy a title from Sealand.
Anyway, let's get back to this movie.
So what worked? Some of the comedy.
The
sets were very good. The costuming, very good. I will say that
he had the coolest doggone jacket. What was that?
The smoking jacket? The Prime Minister?
Yes.
The Prime Minister had the best smoking jacket.
But he was dressed in 1700
everything is
outfit.
Lit. Everything is lit properly. Everything is in focus. Like, I know that's seemingly dumb for me to even say that, but the point is that most of these movies that we watch, not everything is very well lit. Not everything is in focus. This is competently made.
But this is also the comedy before it's an science fiction.
Yeah, it's also comedy before it's science fiction. This was filmed at Pinewood Studios as well, I should say. So, James Bond fame. What didn't work? I think a lot of the acting just wasn't really that good. There's a couple actors that do a halfway decent job. Like the Prime Minister, played by Ron Moody. Bernard Cribbins is always good. The Professor's funny. But everybody else, including like the Grand Duchess, not really. Everyone else is kind of phoning it in or just pantoing it up, like just really over the top.
At the time,
silly.
this Margaret Rutherford is quite old.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I don't think anybody else rises to what's good. I think most of it is what doesn't work. Like most of the acting in this just doesn't work. It seems to be too silly. Some of the comedy doesn't work. None of the science works because it's a comedy. But is there anything else that you feel doesn't work?
The science here, at least they were making a joke about it.
Yeah, they
instead
were.
of going on so serious about it, and you're going, no.
Yeah.
This one, you're supposed to go, no.
Good use of Russian, I'll say that.
There you go.
It's simple Russian. It did not need to be it did not need to be subtitled because you knew basically what was being said anyway.
Niet, da.
Well, they were counting like a din, dva, tri, čtyři, pět, šest, like numbers because they were counting down or something like that. Are there any other thoughts you want? I know this is kind of going to be a short review because there isn't a lot of plot. This is a comedy. Is there anything else you want to say about it besides if we recommend it or not? Like overall impressions, Darlene.
Not really.
Are we recommending it?
I'd recommend it if you want something a little bit different that actually has a science theme to it. I don't know if you'd call it.
If you're looking for science fiction, I'm not recommending it. I'm not recommending it for science fiction. I will, though, say I recommend it as a decent movie from the time. Like, is it amazing? No. It's like...
And we're probably not getting the comedy of this.
It's well made.
The political satiring that it is.
It's well made. There are some funny things in it. I enjoyed myself watching it. I was never bored. That's the thing. I was never bored. So this is like a science fiction adjacent movie, kind of like in many ways to me, like Cat from Outer Space. It's science fiction adjacent. There's a science fiction element in it. Like, hey, we're going to go to the moon.
And it would be okay for kids to watch, too, because...
Yeah, actually it would. It would be... This is perfectly fine for a kid to watch. There's nothing violent in it. It's silly. There's a little bit of slapstick. It's not dumb humor either. But it's silly. It's silly humor. So, yeah, out of a lot of the movies that we've watched, for sure, this is kid-appropriate. All ages. Honest to God, it is. Like same with Cat from Outer Space, even though the Cat from Outer Space has a little bit of humor in it that might be adult, there's no adult humor in this, in my opinion. I didn't like the only thing that was questionable are the Operation Paperclip Nazis giving a Nazi salute. But I mean, if you don't know what the Nazis are, then that joke is lost to you anyway. Right?
And if you know what the Nazis are,
you probably understand why that joke is there.
The joke is there, but you don't think it's a joke.
It's not really a joke because that's like, oh, that's supposed to be Werner von Braun at NASA. And, ooh, god damn, that's a deep cut to a guy that's still alive and working at NASA, Like,
okay.
Anyway, yeah, let's leave it there. I don't know what we're gonna watch for 149. I'll find something. We still do know
but
what
150.
We're gonna watch 2001.
And are we gonna do 2000?
I don't know. That's kind of outside our time frame. We might, but I don't know.
We've done other things outside our time.
We're not going to do it for episode 150. We're not going to do both movies for 150. We're just going to do 2001 for.
You don't want to do 2001 for 151?
2010 for 151?
Yeah.
No, likely not. Now we'll probably, if we're going to do it, we'll save it for a 5 or 10.
Okay.
So
well, this is I'm Darlene.
I'm Aaron.
Good evening.
And keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.